Hello YouTube, welcome to Home and Garden Fix and Tricks. I'm Nikal. In today's video, I'm going to talk about Jamaica and specifically the Jamaican economy. And we're going to be looking at GDP per capita and look at the data from around 1960 up to present. Now, I must put out a disclaimer that I am not an economist. I am not a person who is trained in finance or economics. So, put that out there. What I am though is a concerned citizen of Jamaica and one who would want to see our country grow. And from year to year, we have been seeing that Jamaica is ranked one of the least performing economies in the Caribbean. So we're going to zero in on the GDP per capita, and just to show you how we have compared to other countries in the Caribbean. Stay tuned. Now, before we go into the video, let us look at what is GDP. GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product, and it simply means all the value of goods and services produced in a country in a given year. So, for example, when I go out and I buy a cup of coffee or I buy a bread, all of those activities are contributed directly to the GDP. So the GDP of Jamaica, let us put this in context in terms of monetary figure, and this is up to, I think it's 2022, don't quote me on it, but I'm giving a data from the World Bank and I'm giving from the top of my head. It's around 17.1 billion US dollars. So let us look at GDP per capita now. GDP per capita is the total GDP of a country divided by its population. So as I said a while ago, Jamaica have a GDP of 17.1 billion United States dollars. So you will divide that by 2.8 million approximately. So Jamaica population is around 2.8 million. You will get approximately 6,100 US dollars. So it therefore means that our GDP per capita would have been 6,100 Jamaican dollar. United States dollars. So that's GDP per capita. Now we get that out of the way. Let us look at what GDP per capita tells us. What can we learn from it, and what are the importance or the imperatives? So one of the most important things that we get from GDP per capita is a country's economic what we call it, strength. So you can also use the data to compare a country year after year. So for example, we could compare Jamaica GDP per capita in presently comparing to 60 years ago, say 50 years ago, 20 years ago, and so forth. But also you could use it to compare countries. So we could compare Jamaica to, say, Cuba, Haiti, other countries in the region, even other countries outside of the Caribbean, to look at it is really what we call a key performance indicator or a KPI to tell you how well an economy is performing. So in the next segment, we're going to look at some of that data and just to show you how Jamaica is ranked in terms of the Caribbean and Latin America as it relates to GDP per capita. Now, because GDP is not an ideal metric to judge countries and to compare countries rather, we use GDP per capita. For example, the Jamaica GDP, as I said, it's approximately 17.1 billion United States dollars. But when you look at the GDP of, say, the Cayman Islands have a GDP of approximately 7 billion United States dollars within the same period, 2022, 2023, thereabout. Now, when you look at that, you will say, okay, Jamaica is doing much better than Cayman. When you look at the total GDP versus Jamaica versus Cayman. But when you look at GDP per capita, when you divide that by its population, then you see a different story, a different picture. Because currently, in 2023, 2024, the Cayman Islands recorded a GDP per capita of approximately 99,000 United States dollars per person. That's when you divide the total GDP, 7 point something billion, divided by their population, which is around what? Don't judge me about Cayman Islands. I'm put it up on screen. Put up the population on screen. So you get around 99,000 United States dollar GDP per capita compared to Jamaica of just 6,100 United States dollars. So what GDP per capita does is give you the ability to compare countries despite their population and despite their total GDP. Just like crime rate or murder rate, it's the same thing where they do it per 100,000, where they will give you. That's why Jamaica is the most murderous country in the Caribbean. And people would say no, because Jamaica have a lower murder figure in terms of the total murders per year than, say, United States. But yet still we rank number one because they looked at murder rate per 100,000 of the population. So it's kind of similar. So that is what GDP allows us to do. It allows us to compare countries in a way where you really couldn't compare them in terms of their total GDP. So that's just it. I must make mention of this. One of the disadvantages of GDP per capita is that GDP per capita, while it gives you a good metric to while it is a good metric to compare countries in terms of their economic power, it is not a good metric to use to look at income distribution. Income distribution is totally different because you may see that a country like Jamaica with a low GDP per capita may have a better income distribution than a country with a higher GDP per capita. Like say, for example, let us look at Cuba. Cuba in 2023 recorded a higher GDP per capita than Jamaica, but the income distribution in Cuba is different and the standard of living also is different. So we have to be careful when we compare GDP per capita. We can't use it to judge income distribution. A country like, say, Nigeria have a relatively low GDP per capita. Or let's just say, compared to Jamaica, a relatively higher GDP per capita, but a very low income distribution in terms of who gets where. Because you have a lot of extremely rich people in Nigeria and you have a lot of extremely poor people in Nigeria. So we can't use GDP per capita as a single metric to judge the happiness and the well-being and the economic well-being of a citizen or of the citizens of a specific country. So now we get that out of the way, we're going to go straight into looking at the data, the raw data to compare Jamaica with countries in the Caribbean and Latin America. Alright folks, so let us look at this bit of data right here. It says gross domestic product GDP per capita in Latin America and the Caribbean in 2022 by country. The currency here is the world standard, the US dollar. So let us look at the top right here. At the top you can see 35,208.64 cents, and that's Puerto Rico at the highest at the top there. Alright. For some reason I didn't see they don't put countries like Cayman Island on this. I don't know why. But Cayman is much higher than that. Bahamas is there. It's 31,458.3 cents. Uruguay, St. Kitts, Barbados, and you can get the picture. Now let us go down to Jamaica. Alright, right here is a regional average. So the regional average is 9,474.47 cents. That's regional average. I still can't find Jamaica. So Jamaica is way down here at 6,047.22 cents. Right? So Jamaica is far below the regional average. And when you look at it, the only Caribbean country that is below Jamaica is Haiti, right at the bottom here, at 1,748.26 cents. So Jamaica is outside of Haiti, Jamaica would be at the bottom of the Caribbean. And we know Haiti have their economic turmoil and social upheaval and so forth, right? So Jamaica, so the countries below Jamaica, you have Suriname, Guatemala, El Salvador, Bolivia, Honduras, Nicaragua, and then Haiti at the bottom. And Jamaica is right there. Now imagine Jamaica with a population of 2.8, roughly 3 million people, right? Similar population to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is 3.2 million, right? So Jamaica and Puerto Rico have practically the same population, while their per capita income is 35,208.64 cents, while Jamaica is just what, 6,000 and change. So that's what, 6 times the per capita income of Jamaica. And I must tell you that Jamaica has been stagnant in terms of growth for decades. So I'm not here blaming any one political party. Both political parties have to take responsibility for this, especially those who were in power for the longest while. They know themselves. As I said, I'm not going to talk about politics. It's just the reality. So that is that. It's very unfortunate that Jamaica is all the way down there. And when you compare it to places like Cayman Islands have a per capita income in 2023 of $99,000 US. 99,000 US. Their GDP in 2023 was close to 7 billion. If not 7 billion, if it's not close to 7 billion, it's 7 point something billion US dollars. while Jamaica is just 17 billion, 17.1 billion, right? So if you should work out the GDP, real GDP for Puerto Rico, it's to be upward of 100 billion, upward of 100 billion, given that their GDP per capita is 35,000, right? So the next graph now I'm going to show you the World Bank data as it relates to the same GDP per capita, but I'm going to have a graph that I can actually plot to show you some the different countries in terms of their GDP per capita compared to Jamaica. So we're going to look at places like Singapore, places like Bahamas, places like, you get the gist. So see me over there. So this bit of data, is coming from the World Bank Group, and it's a GDP per capita, US, Puerto Rico, and Jamaica. Let's just look at this. Let's look at the graph. Started out from 1960 up to 2022. Notice how both countries started out similar. Notice the difference. It wasn't a stark difference back in the 1970s, but as it moved up into the late 80s, they start to move away, and Jamaica was on its decline right there. Jamaica went down as low as 1004, right, during that period. And as you can see, Jamaica up here now, all the way to 2022, still at 6,447. Now look at Puerto Rico up there, 35,000. And you can go and you can add any country you want. Let us look at Cuba. Let us look at Cuba. Let's just add Cuba to the mix. That is Cuba. 2016. That is Cuba. We have the data for 2020. We don't have the 2022 data for Cuba. 9,000. And at the same time, Cuba have a much larger population than Jamaica. But as I said, don't use this alone to judge the overall economic well-being of a country, because, as we say, Cuba is a communist country, So the disparity of income is, it's tricky. Right? Jamaica, 2020, as low as what? 4,008. See? That's Puerto Rico. So Jamaica have a lot of work to do in this regard. We have to demand from our politicians. We have to demand from our leaders. And of course, we also have to retool ourselves and to make sure that we have the necessary skill set. We have we are doing the necessary work, and we are putting in the necessary things in place so that we can be a more prosperous nation. This whole heap of baga music and get rich quick lifestyle and digging out the hand miggle and drinking special early in the morning and going to party, not going to carry us where we want to be. This is where Jamaica should be. That's where we should be. I'm going to put another country, because everybody talk about this country because they started out with Jamaica basically on the same level. They are coming from the same socio-economic background, the same everything. They were similar in terms of population, everything. So let us look at Singapore. Let us look at Singapore. Let us add Singapore to the mix. Now, this graph, notice that all the countries started out similar, All of them started out similar. See? This is Singapore in the red. This is 2008. Similar period for Puerto Rico. Similar period for Jamaica. Similar period for Cuba. Let us look at them now. 82,807. While Jamaica is down here. That's how much times Jamaica. Persons who are good at maths can work that out. While Jamaica is right there, Singapore is up here. I heard a story that Lee Kuan Yew actually came to Jamaica and adopted the Jamaican model back in the 1970s. But let us look in the 1970s. Just look at 1970. Let's look at the 1970. 1975. Jamaica. Let's get this a little bit bigger. Singapore. See? We were close. We were close. The disparity was not that great. Singapore was at what, 2000 something, we was at 1000 something in the 1970. But as time progressed, look at what happened. Look at what happened. This is where we are today. This is the type of data that we have to analyze. This is the type of data that the information that we have to know as Jamaicans, so we can demand more from our politicians. So when you hear them come on platform telling us, oh, Jamaica is growing at so and so percent, we can say to them, so look here, man. What is the per capita income? What is our standard of living like? What is our unemployment rate? These are the things that we have to raise the bar in terms of the debate that we have with our politicians. We have to demand more from them. But as I said, the politicians alone cannot do it, because I always say people deserve the government that they have. So we have to be blamed as well. We have to take the blame collectively. It is so unfortunate, but it is what it is. It is what it is. You can find this data, as I said, on the World Bank website. It's there. Jamaica, the lowest in the Caribbean outside of Haiti. I could say, well, not in the Latin Americans, because there are, I think, around 5 to 6 countries that are below us. But we are the lowest in the Caribbean. That is bad. That is bad. Call to action. Demand more from our politicians. Demand more from our leaders. Demand more from ourselves. Give more. How we can fix this? You have to be more productive. You have to be more creative. More innovative. So instead of, as I say, we are go down the cultural thing they know, where we are change for some little fool things. Slide pan toll and all these things, and drinking and partying and all these things. Not going to take us anywhere. We have to take it serious. We have to get creative. Have to get creative. Ladies and gentlemen, help to push this video. Help to get it where it needs to be, so that collectively as a people we can achieve Vision 2030. Even if we don't achieve it in 2030, even if it's 2060. And as I always say, it is not in gathering the most, but it's in sharing the most that the most is received. For Home and Garden Fix and Tricks, I'm Nikal. Peace.